Ajusi, can you read this letter? Oma says it's very, very urgent.
The 6-year-old boy's blood-soaked sneakers left small red footprints across the marble floor of Seoul's most dangerous mafia headquarters. Nobody stopped him. Not the armed guards who'd killed men for less than eye contact. Not the security who'd watched the silent dragon execute a traitor 30 seconds earlier. Not the underboss whose hands were still covered in someone else's blood. They all just stared as this tiny mixed-race child, no taller than the gun cabinet, wearing clothes that screamed poverty, walked straight past metal detectors, past checkpoints, past every barrier designed to keep the world out of Kong Min-jae's fortress. Walked straight into the underground office, where Seoul's most feared mafia boss stood over a fresh corpse, guns still smoking in his hand. The little boy looked up at the man who'd just murdered someone in cold blood, tears streaming down his face, and held out a blood-stained yellow envelope with shaking hands. "Ajusi," he whispered, his voice somehow cutting through the suffocating silence of death. "Can you read this letter? Iyama says it's very, very urgent. Min-jae, the silent dragon, the man who'd killed 18 people that year without blinking, the monster who ruled Seoul's underworld with surgical precision and zero mercy, looked down at this child and froze. Because staring back at him were his own eyes,
His own jawline.
his own face, reflected back through 7 years and a woman he'd thrown away because he'd believed lies instead of love. The gun fell from Min-jae's hand, clattering against concrete. "Who are you?" His voice came out broken, barely human. The little boy's chin lifted with impossible courage despite the tears, despite the fear, despite standing in a room that still smelled like gunpowder and death. "My name is Elijah Walaini," he said, small voice steady. "And Iyama says you're my appa. She's dying. She sent me to save us." Every guard in that blood-soaked room watched as their boss, the man who'd never shown weakness, who'd built an empire on fear, who'd convinced himself that love was for the weak, dropped to his knees. Not in defeat, but in recognition of something that would destroy him more completely than any bullet ever could. The child standing before him was his son. The woman who sent him was dying. And the letter in that small hand was about to rewrite 3 lives, expose a 7-year conspiracy, and prove that even monsters can be brought to their knees by the 2 words every killer fears most. Your appa. If you're already shaken up and ready to watch a ruthless mafia boss get absolutely destroyed by a 6-year-old's courage, do me a solid. Smash that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe because I'm dropping stories like this every single day that'll have you ugly crying and forgetting to breathe. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens when the silent dragon reads that letter and realizes the woman he loved never betrayed him, and the child standing in his office is the son someone tried to make him believe he could never have. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare started. 7 years ago. To the night a mafia boss fell in love with the wrong woman and made a choice that would haunt him until a blood-stained envelope showed him the truth. Pamela Walaini was 23 years old when she realized she was falling in love with a man who killed people for a living. She'd been working as a hostess at the Crimson Dragon, Seoul's most exclusive nightclub, the kind of place where government officials, CEOs, and men who made problems disappear came to forget they had souls. For exactly 3 months, when Kong Min-jae noticed her. She was the only black African woman in a building full of Korean faces, which meant she was either completely invisible or impossible to ignore. There was no in-between. Min-jae chose impossible to ignore. It was a Tuesday night. Pamela remembered because Tuesdays were supposed to be slow, supposed to be safe. But then Min-jae emerged from the VIP room with blood spattered across his tailored black suit like abstract art, dragging an unconscious man by the collar. Something about stolen territory. Something about broken promises. Something about respect. The man never woke up. And when Min-jae looked at Pamela, really looked at her, like she was the only person in the room who mattered, she should have run. Should have recognized that a man who kills without flinching isn't the kind of man you fall in love with. But she was young and broke and so tired of being invisible that when Seoul's silent dragon looked at her with eyes that held more pain than violence, she didn't look away. 3 weeks later, They were lovers. 6 months after that, she was pregnant. And 7 months into the most dangerous, passionate, impossible love affair of her life, Seo Junho, Min Jae's trusted underboss, his childhood friend, the man who stood at his right hand through every war and every betrayal, decided that Pamela Walaini needed to disappear. Not because she was a threat, because Junho wanted her for himself. That night, the surveillance footage was perfect. Too perfect. Pamela, meeting with a man in a dark alley. Money changing hands. Whispered conversations. The man was a detective. Everyone in Min Jae's organization recognized him. The wire recording was devastating. Pamela's voice, or what sounded exactly like her voice, reporting Mafia activities, names, locations, plans. I'll have everything you need by Friday. Bank accounts, weapon shipments, the location of his safe houses. Just promise me you'll keep me safe when this goes down. The witnesses were credible. Pamela's roommate paid 10 million Korean wons to testify that Pamela had been acting strange, taking secret phone calls, asking questions about Min Jae's business. And Junho, perfect Junho, delivered it all to Min Jae with the right amount of reluctance, the perfect note of concern. Hyung, he'd said, using the term of brotherhood that made the betrayal cut deeper. I didn't want to believe it either. But the evidence, you have to protect the organization. You know what happens to informants. Min Jae knew. In their world, police informants didn't just disappear. They were made examples of.
Tortured.
Dismembered. Left in pieces as warnings.
So he made a choice.
He called Pamela to his office at 3 a.m., waited until she arrived, beautiful and trusting, wearing the necklace he'd given her for her birthday. And he told her to run. Leave Seoul, he'd said, his voice cold enough to freeze blood. Tonight. I'm giving you money and a head start. If you're still in this city by morning, I can't protect you. Pamela had stared at him in confusion, then horror. Min Jae, what are you talking about? Protect me from what? Don't, he'd interrupted, unable to look at her. Don't insult me with lies. I know what you've been doing. I know what you are. What I am. Her voice had risen, desperate. Min Jae, I don't understand. A police informant. The words had exploded from him. 7 months of love turning to rage in an instant. You've been feeding information to the police, Pamela. Don't deny it. I have proof. She'd gone pale. That's insane. Min Jae, I would never. Get out. He turned away from her, unable to watch her lie to his face. Take the money. Disappear. If I ever see you again, I won't be able to stop what happens next. Pamela had stood there, shaking, tears streaming down her face. I'm pregnant, she'd whispered. Min Jae, I'm pregnant with your baby. He'd closed his eyes, forcing himself to believe she was lying about that too. Then you better run faster. She'd left that night, vanished into Seoul's underbelly with nothing but the clothes on her back and the money he'd given her. Money she'd refused to touch for months out of pride, out of rage, out of heartbreak. Min Jae never saw her again, until a 6-year-old boy walked into his office, carrying a letter written in her handwriting, and looked at him with his own eyes. Min Jae stared at the child standing in his blood-soaked office, and for the first time in 7 years, he felt something other than emptiness. Terror. Because if this child was his son, and every instinct, every detail of the boy's face screamed that impossible truth, then everything he believed about Pamela was a lie. And if Pamela never betrayed him, then someone else had manufactured that evidence. Someone close enough to access his office, his files, his trust. Someone who'd been standing at his right hand for 30 years. Min Jae's eyes shifted to Seo Junho, who stood in the shadows of the office with an expression that had gone from casual interest to carefully controlled panic in the space of 3 seconds. Their eyes met. And Junho knew. The game was over. But before Min Jae could speak, before he could demand answers, Elijah took a trembling step forward. Please, Ajusi, the little boy said, his voice breaking with the weight of a mission he was too young to carry. Yama said if you read the letter, you'll understand. She said you're the only one who can save us. Min-jae's hands that had killed 18 men that year without trembling, shook as he opened the blood-stained envelope. And the moment he began to read Pamela's words, written in the shaking script of a dying woman, the silent dragon felt something he hadn't experienced in 7 years. His heart breaking. My dearest Min-jae, I'm writing this from a hospital bed, watching machines count down the hours I have left. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 3 weeks, maybe less. The doctors stopped pretending I had more time. I know what you're thinking. Why now? Why, after 7 years of silence? Why send our son, and yes, Min-jae, he is our son, into the most dangerous place in Seoul to find you? Because I'm dying, and Elijah deserves a father. I never betrayed you. Whatever evidence you saw, whatever you were told, it was all lies. I loved you with everything I had. I still do, even after you threw me away like I was nothing. But this isn't about us anymore. It's about the boy standing in your office right now, the one who crossed Seoul alone because his Iyama told him you were brave enough to read a letter. The one who has your eyes, your stubbornness, your impossible courage. He doesn't know you're his father yet. I couldn't tell him about a man who'd disappeared from our lives. But he knows his Iyama is dying, and he's been so brave, Min-jae. So impossibly brave. I'm not asking you to forgive me for something I didn't do. I'm not asking you to love me again. I'm asking you to be the father our son deserves. To give him the protection, the future, the family I can't provide. The experimental treatment at Seoul National University Hospital could save my life. 250 million Korean wons. I've exhausted every resource, sold everything, begged everyone. I have nothing left. If you ever loved me, if any part of what we shared was real, please don't let my death be the end of our son's hope. He's everything good about both of us. Don't let him become an orphan because of lies someone told 7 years ago. Please, Min-jae, read this letter. Look at our son. And remember who you were before the world convinced you that love was weakness. The man I fell in love with is still in there somewhere. Elijah needs that man. Pamela. Min-jae finished reading and looked up at the child standing before him. Elijah Walaini. 6 years old. Mixed Korean-African features that were undeniably his. Brown eyes that held too much fear and too much hope for someone so young. His son. The room had gone completely silent. Even the guards, men who'd seen Min-jae torture informants, execute traitors, destroy families without flinching, watched with held breath as the silent dragon's carefully constructed walls began to crack. How did you get here? Min-jae asked, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't hide. Elijah's small chest puffed up with pride despite the terror clearly written across his face. I took 3 buses. Yama wrote down the directions. She said I was brave enough to find you by myself. His voice wavered. Was she right? Are you going to help us? And then, in a moment that would become legend in Seoul's underworld, a story whispered in safe houses and dark alleys for years to come, Kong Min-jae, the silent dragon, the man who'd built an empire on fear and blood, dropped to his knees. Not in defeat, in surrender. Yes, he whispered, his voice breaking for the first time in 7 years. Yes, Elijah. I'm going to help your Yama. I'm going to help both of you. The little boy's face crumpled with relief, and he threw his small arms around Min-jae's neck, burying his face against the shoulder of a man who still had blood on his hands. And as Min-jae held his son, this brave, impossible, perfect child who'd walked into hell to save his dying mother, he felt something he'd thought was dead forever stirring in his chest. The capacity to love, to protect, to be human. Behind them, Seo Junho watched his carefully constructed 7-year conspiracy begin to unravel and knew that his betrayal would cost him everything. Because the silent dragon had just found something worth protecting more than his empire. And there was no force in Seoul's underworld more dangerous than a father who just discovered he had a son to save and a woman to protect from the lies that had destroyed them both. Some letters ask for money. Some letters beg for mercy. This letter was about to start a war. And before it was over, Seoul's Mafia would learn that even dragons can be gentle when they're protecting the family someone tried to steal from them. Min-jae didn't release Elijah immediately. He couldn't. His arms that had broken bones, choked the life from traitors, held guns steady while men begged for mercy, trembled as they held this small boy who smelled like cheap soap and innocence. 7 years. 7 goddamn years of believing Pamela had betrayed him. 7 years of burying every soft feeling under layers of violence and control. And now this child, this impossible, beautiful child, was destroying everything with nothing but his existence. Boss. Junho's voice cut through the moment like a blade. We should verify. Get out. Min-jae didn't look up, didn't release Elijah. His voice carried the kind of quiet menace that made seasoned killers flinch. All of you.
Now.
The guards scrambled for the door. They'd seen their boss murder men for less than hesitation. But Junho lingered, his calculated mind already spinning damage control. Min-jae, you need to think about this rationally. The organization. I said get out. Min-jae finally looked up, and whatever Junho saw in those eyes made him take an involuntary step backward. Before I forget, we grew up together. Junho left. But not before Min-jae caught the flash of panic beneath his concerned expression.
Good.
Let him panic. Let him wonder how much Min-jae suspected. Let him sweat. When the door closed, leaving just Min-jae and Elijah in that blood-soaked office, the little boy pulled back and looked up at his father with those devastating eyes. Are you really going to help Yama? Elijah's voice was so small, so fragile. She said you might not remember her. That you might not want to help. Min-jae cupped the child's face with hands that had done terrible things, studying features that were undeniably his own. I remember your Iyama, he said, his voice rough. I remember everything about her. Then why did you leave us? The question hit like a bullet to the chest. Min-jae had no answer that wouldn't destroy this child's faith in him. So he said the only truth that mattered. I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. But I'm going to fix it. Elijah nodded, accepting this with the simple trust only children possessed. Iyama is really sick. She tries to hide it, but I hear her crying at night. And sometimes, his voice dropped to a whisper. Sometimes she doesn't eat for days because we don't have enough money for both of us. Rage, white-hot and devastating, flooded through Min-jae. While he'd been sitting in his fortress compound, drowning in money and blood, Pamela had been starving.
Dying.
Raising their son alone in poverty. That ends today, Min-jae said. He stood, lifting Elijah effortlessly. We're going to see your Iyama right now. Really? Hope blazed across Elijah's face. But she's at the hospital. It's far. I had to take 3 buses to get here. We're not taking buses. Min-jae carried his son toward the door, his mind already cataloging what needed to happen. Medical care, DNA test for legal protection, security detail, and most importantly, finding out who'd manufactured that evidence 7 years ago. Though he already knew, had known the moment Junho's expression shifted from casual to panicked. His childhood friend, his most trusted advisor. The man who'd stood beside him through gang wars and territory disputes. The man who'd orchestrated everything to keep Pamela away from him. Min-jae's phone buzzed as he reached his car, a black Mercedes with bulletproof glass and armed guards trailing at a discreet distance. His driver took one look at the child in his arms and wisely asked no questions. Take us to Seoul National University Hospital, Min-jae ordered.
Fast.
As the car pulled away from the Crimson Dragon, Elijah pressed his face against the window, watching Seoul's nighttime streets blur past. Yama is going to be so surprised, he said. Then, more quietly, she thought you wouldn't come. I'll always come. The words felt foreign in Min-jae's mouth. He'd spent 7 years believing that caring about anyone made him weak, made him vulnerable. But holding this child, knowing Pamela was dying, he realized the truth. He'd been weak all along. Weak enough to believe manufactured lies. Weak enough to throw away the only real thing he'd ever had. But that weakness ended now.
His phone rang. Junho.
Min-jae ignored it. Let him panic. Let him wonder. Min-jae needed time to think, to plan, to figure out how deep this conspiracy ran. Do you know my name? Elijah asked suddenly. Elijah, Min-jae said. Your Iyama wrote it in her letter. She named me after her grandfather. Elijah played with the hem of his worn shirt. I told her I wanted a Korean name too, like Appa. He said the word tentatively, testing how it felt. Are you my Appa? Min-jae looked at this child, this brave, brilliant, heartbreaking child, and saw 7 years of missed birthdays, missed first words, missed everything. Saw Pamela facing cancer alone. Saw the life they could have had if he'd trusted her instead of manufactured evidence. Yes, he said, his voice breaking. I'm your Appa. Elijah smiled then, bright and devastating. I knew it. I told Iyama you had my eyes. They did have the same eyes. Same intensity, same depth, same fire. Everyone in that office had seen it. Which meant Junho had seen it too. Which meant whatever game Junho was playing was about to get desperate. Min-jae's phone buzzed again. This time, a text from his head of security. Red Phoenix Triad moving in Gangnam. Looks like recon. Perfect timing. Their rivals smelling blood in the water, sensing weakness. They'd heard about the child somehow. Word traveled fast in Seoul's underworld. And now they were circling, waiting to see if the silent dragon had lost his edge. Let them come. Min-jae had spent 7 years building an empire on fear and blood. Anyone who thought a child made him weak was about to learn the difference between a dragon protecting territory and a dragon protecting family. One left survivors as warnings. The other left nothing but ash. Appa. Elijah's voice pulled him from dark thoughts. Are you angry? Not at you. Min-jae forced himself to relax his grip on the child. Never at you. Then at who? At the man who'd stolen 7 years from him. At himself for believing lies. At a world that had convinced him love was weakness instead of the most dangerous weapon he'd ever wielded. But he said none of this. Instead, he pulled Elijah closer and said, at the people who hurt your Iyama. But I'm going to make it right. The car pulled up to Seoul National University Hospital, a massive complex of glass and steel where the wealthy came to cheat death and the dying came to beg for miracles. Min-jae carried Elijah through automatic doors, past reception, straight to the elevators. Security tried to stop him. One look at his face made them step aside. 7th floor. Elijah directed. Room 714. They rode up in silence. Min-jae's heart, that organ he'd thought was dead, pounded against his ribs. What would he say to her? What could he possibly say after throwing her away, after 7 years of silence, after letting her face cancer alone? The elevator doors opened. Elijah squirmed to be put down, then grabbed Min-jae's hand and pulled him down the corridor with surprising strength for someone so small. Room 714, Elijah repeated, stopping outside a door. Iyama is in here. Min-jae stared at that door like it was an execution chamber. Behind it was the woman he'd loved more than anything. The woman he'd destroyed because he'd trusted the wrong person. The woman who was dying because he'd been too proud, too suspicious, too goddamn weak to verify the truth. It's okay, Elijah whispered, squeezing his hand. Iyama still loves you. I can tell. Those words, so simple, so trusting, gave Min-jae the courage to push open the door. And there she was. Pamela Walaini, looking nothing like the vibrant woman who danced in his nightclub 7 years ago. Cancer had stolen her curves, her energy, her color. She looked ethereal in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines and four lines, like she was already halfway gone. But when she saw Elijah, her face transformed. Baby, you're back. Did you? Her eyes found Min-jae standing in the doorway, and every word died in her throat. 7 years collapsed between them. 7 years of lies, pain, survival, and love that had never really died, just buried itself under betrayal and heartbreak. Hello, Pamela, Min-jae said, his voice rough. I got your letter. The machines monitoring Pamela's heart rate went crazy, beeping frantically as if they could sense the emotional earthquake happening in that small hospital room. She stared at Min-jae like he was a ghost, or worse, a hallucination brought on by too much morphine. "You came," she whispered. "I didn't think. Elijah, baby, come here." But Elijah was already climbing onto the bed, careful of the 4 lines, wrapping his small arms around his mother like he could physically hold her to this world through sheer will. "I told you Appa would help us, Siyama. I told you."
Appa.
The word hung in the air like smoke. Pamela's eyes, once so full of life, now hollowed out by pain and chemo, found Min-jae's. "You told him?" Her voice carried accusation and hope in equal measure. He figured it out on his own. Min-jae moved closer to the bed, each step feeling like walking through quicksand. The resemblance is undeniable. 7 years, Pamela said, and there was steel beneath her exhaustion. 7 years of silence, Min-jae. 7 years of raising him alone. And you show up now because... She glanced at Elijah, censoring herself. "Because I'm dying? Because our son crossed Seoul alone to find me." Min-jae's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Because you wrote a letter that destroyed everything I thought I knew." "What you thought you knew?" Pamela laughed, bitter and broken. "You mean the lies someone fed you? The evidence that convinced you I was a police informant?" Elijah looked between them, confusion clouding his young face. "What's an informant?" "Nothing, baby." Pamela stroked his hair with trembling fingers. "Grown-up stuff. Why don't you go see if the nurses have any juice boxes? The good kind with the dinosaurs?" Elijah hesitated, clearly sensing the tension crackling between his parents like electricity. But he was 6, and the promise of dinosaur juice boxes won out. "Don't fight while I'm gone," he warned them both, then scrambled off the bed and disappeared into the hallway. The moment the door closed, Pamela's careful composure shattered. "You destroyed me," she said, tears streaming down her gaunt face. "You looked at me like I was nothing, like everything we had meant nothing. And then you just threw me away. I thought you betrayed me." Min-jae's voice was raw. "The surveillance footage showed you meeting with a detective. The wire recording had your voice reporting our activities. Your roommate testified." "My roommate." Pamela's voice rose, then cracked. "Sarah? She told me she was moving back to Busan for family reasons. I never even suspected. Someone paid her 10 million won to lie about you." Pamela went very still.
Who?
Min-jae didn't answer immediately, because saying it out loud, admitting that his childhood friend, his most trusted advisor, had orchestrated everything, felt like swallowing glass. "I have suspicions. But I need proof before I act." "Proof." Pamela's laugh was hollow. "You needed proof 7 years ago, Min-jae. But you just believed whatever lies they told you about me." The accusation hit like a physical blow, because it was true. He'd seen the evidence and never questioned it. Never verified it. Never trusted the woman he claimed to love more than his own suspicions. "You're right," he said simply. "I failed you. I failed us. And I failed our son." Pamela studied him with eyes that had seen too much pain. "Why are you really here? To ease your guilt? To play hero now that I'm dying?" "Because that little boy crossed a city alone to find me." Min-jae moved closer, gripping the bed rail. "Because you're dying of cancer, and he's going to be orphaned. Because I just spent the last hour holding my son for the first time and realizing everything I lost." "Everything you threw away," Pamela corrected. "Yes." Min-jae didn't flinch from the truth. "Everything I threw away because I was too proud to verify, too suspicious to trust, too weak to fight for what we had." Something in Pamela's expression shifted. "Weak? The silent dragon? The man who built an empire on fear?" "Weak," Min-jae repeated. "Because strength isn't killing without mercy. It's loving despite the risk. And I was too much of a coward to do that." Pamela's tears fell faster now. "I tried to reach you. After I found out I was pregnant, I called your office 50 times. Came to the Crimson Dragon 3 times. Your people turned me away every single time." Min-jae's hands tightened on the bed rail hard enough to make the metal groan. Another piece of the puzzle. Someone had given orders to block Pamela's access. Someone with enough authority that security wouldn't question it.
Junho.
I need to know everything, Min-jae said. The surveillance footage, do you remember anything about that day? The man you supposedly met with. I never met with any detective. Pamela's voice was firm despite her exhaustion. The only man I met with during those months was the landlord collecting rent. And he was about 70 years old. The wire recording. Your voice reporting Mafia activities. I don't even know what half your activities were, Min-jae. You never told me details. Said it was to protect me. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Min-jae pulled out his phone, scrolling through files he'd kept buried for 7 years. Files he'd never been able to delete because some part of him, the weak, human part he'd tried to kill, couldn't let go of Pamela completely. He found the surveillance footage. Grainy, low quality, clearly taken from a distance. A woman who could be Pamela meeting with a man who could be a detective. The angle made identification difficult, but not impossible. Pamela watched the video, and her expression shifted from pain to confusion to something harder. That's not me. What? That woman is taller than me. Look at her proportions compared to the doorway. And see her hair? Mine was shorter then. I just cut it after you said. She trailed off, the memory clearly painful. Min-jae looked closer. She was right. The proportions were off. Subtle enough that someone viewing it quickly wouldn't notice.
But there.
And the wire recording? Pamela asked. Min-jae played it. Pamela's voice, or what sounded exactly like it, reporting activities, promising evidence, asking for protection. Pamela listened with growing horror. That's not my voice. It sounds like me, but listen to how she pronounces certain words. I don't have that accent. And I would never say gonna. You used to tease me about being too formal. Min-jae listened again, and she was right. Subtle differences. A voice actress, maybe. Or sophisticated editing. Either way, someone had gone to enormous trouble to manufacture convincing but ultimately fake evidence. The kind of elaborate con that took planning, resources, and intimate knowledge of both Min-jae and Pamela. Junho, Pamela said suddenly. He asked me about my schedule once. Said you wanted to surprise me with a date night. I thought it was sweet. Min-jae's vision went red. Every piece was falling into place now. Junho asking about Pamela's schedule. Junho having access to Min-jae's office and files. Junho positioning himself perfectly to present the evidence. Junho offering comfort when Min-jae's world fell apart. Junho, who'd watched Pamela dance at the Crimson Dragon with an expression Min-jae had been too blind to recognize as obsession instead of casual interest. I'm going to kill him, Min-jae said quietly.
No.
Pamela's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. You're not. Because if you kill him, you'll go to prison or spark a gang war. And Elijah needs his father. The words hit like ice water. She was right. The old Min-jae would have killed Junho slowly, made an example of him, sent a message about betrayal. But that Min-jae didn't have a 6-year-old son who needed him. Then what do you suggest? He didn't pull away from her touch, even though her fingers were cold and thin against his skin. You're the Mafia boss, Pamela said with a ghost of her old smile. Figure it out. But do it smart. Do it in a way that doesn't leave our son fatherless. Our son. The possessive made something warm and painful bloom in Min-jae's chest. First, he said, we need to get you into treatment. Your letter mentioned an experimental protocol. That costs 250 million won. Pamela laughed bitterly. I have 17,000 won in my bank account. Min-jae pulled out his phone and made a call. Dr. Kong? This is Kong Min-jae. I need you to arrange immediate admission to Seoul National University Hospital for a stage 4 pancreatic cancer patient.
Pamela Walini.
Yes, the experimental protocol. Whatever it costs. He looked at Pamela while he spoke. Price is irrelevant. I want your best oncologist, the newest treatments, no expense spared. Pamela stared at him. Min-jae, that's... My son needs his mother, Min-jae interrupted. And I need... He stopped, the words catching in his throat. I need you to live. The machines monitoring Pamela's heart rate beeped faster again, but this time not from shock. From something else. Something that had survived 7 years of betrayal and heartbreak. Why? She whispered. Because 7 years ago, I loved you more than anything. Min Jae's voice was rough. And throwing you away didn't kill that. It just buried it. And seeing you now, seeing what we created together. He gestured to where Elijah had disappeared. I'm not making the same mistake twice.
I'm Ding, Minye.
Not if I can help it. And if the treatment doesn't work, then I'll be there. For you and for Elijah. The way I should have been 7 years ago. Pamela's tears fell silently now. You can't just walk back into our lives and fix everything with money. I know. Min Jae finally allowed himself to touch her, his rough hand covering hers. But I can start. And I can make sure whoever did this to us pays for every day you suffered. The door burst open. Elijah stood there with a nurse, holding a juice box triumphantly. They had the T-Rex one. Then he saw his parents holding hands and smiled, so bright it hurt to look at. Does this mean we're a family now? Min Jae and Pamela looked at each other. 7 years of pain between them. 7 years of questions. 7 years of a love that had survived despite everything trying to kill it. Yes, Pamela said softly. I think it does. 2 days later, Min Jae's Mercedes pulled up to an address that made his driver visibly nervous. Gyeoryong Village, Seoul's last remaining slum, a sprawl of makeshift housing and extreme poverty tucked between billion-won apartments and gleaming office buildings, a scar the city tried to ignore. Boss, are you sure about this? His driver, Young-ho, glanced at the narrow alleyways where families lived in structures that looked one strong wind away from collapse. It's not safe. We should bring more security. I'll be fine. Min Jae stepped out of the car, adjusting his suit jacket. He dressed down. No designer labels, no obvious wealth, but even in plain black, he screamed money and danger. Wait here. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the village. Children played in the narrow streets, their laughter incongruous with the poverty surrounding them. Women hung laundry between buildings that shouldn't still be standing. Men sat in clusters, smoking and watching Min Jae with the wary recognition of people who knew a predator when they saw one. Min Jae had the address memorized. Building 7, Unit 23. He found it at the end of a muddy path, a structure that made his chest tighten with rage. This was where Pamela had raised their son. This was where she'd faced cancer alone. An older woman stepped into his path. Nigerian, maybe. Her dark skin weathered by hard living but her eyes sharp with protective instinct. You lost, businessman? I'm looking for Pamela Walaini. The woman's expression hardened.
She's sick.
In hospital. Her boy too, I hope. Elijah is with her. Min Jae met her gaze steadily. I'm his father. His father. The woman's laugh was harsh. Pamela never mentioned a father. Only that she raised that boy alone for 6 years. The accusation hit like it should. I'm here to change that. Money can't fix everything. The woman, her name tag said Mrs. Okonkwo, looked him up and down. But it can fix a lot. That girl worked herself to exhaustion for that boy. 3 jobs. Cleaning offices at night, working markets during day, teaching English on weekends. All while dying inside. Each word was a knife between Min Jae's ribs. I didn't know. Didn't know or didn't care? Mrs. Okonkwo's voice softened slightly. You one of those men who throws away good women? I was, Min Jae admitted. I'm trying not to be anymore. Something in his honesty must have reached her, because Mrs. Okonkwo stepped aside. Unit 23.
Doors unlocked.
We don't have much worth stealing here. Min Jae climbed rickety stairs that groaned under his weight. Found a door that barely hung on its hinges. Pushed it open to find a home. It wasn't much. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen. No running water. He spotted containers of collected rainwater by the makeshift stove. No heating beyond a small electric heater that probably cost more to run than Pamela could afford. But the walls were covered in Elijah's drawings. The makeshift shelves held books, both Korean and English. Clothes were folded neatly despite their worn condition. This was where his son had grown up. This was the life he'd condemned them to because he'd trusted manufactured lies over the woman he loved. Min Jae's phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Kong. Patient admitted. Treatment starts tomorrow. Prognosis guarded but hopeful. He texted back. Cost? Initial phase, 280 million Korean wons. Ongoing treatment could reach 500 million Korean wons depending on response. Min Jae didn't hesitate. Approve everything. Send me updates twice daily. 500 million won. He'd spent more on cars, on watches, on things that meant nothing. And Pamela had been here, dying, unable to afford even the initial consultation.
His phone rang. Junho.
Third call today. Min Jae finally answered. Hyung. Junho's voice carried false concern. Where have you been? We have the territory meeting with Red Phoenix tonight. Cancel it. Cancel it? Min Jae, we can't show weakness. I said cancel it. Min Jae's voice dropped to dangerous quiet. And clear my schedule for the next week. Silence. Then, carefully. This is about that child, isn't it? Min Jae, you need to think clearly. Anyone can claim. His name is Elijah. Min Jae walked to the window, looking out at the poverty his son had grown up in. And he's mine. DNA test scheduled for tomorrow will confirm it. More silence. Min Jae could practically hear Junho's mind racing, calculating, planning how to spin this. That's wonderful news, Hyung. Junho finally said. But are you sure the woman is being truthful? Women like that. Women like what? Min Jae's voice could have frozen blood.
Junho backtracked smoothly.
I just mean 7 years is a long time. And cancer treatment is expensive. It's convenient timing. Convenient. Min Jae laughed without humor. You think a woman gave herself stage for cancer for convenient timing? No, of course not. I'm just saying be careful. Have you considered that this might be a setup? That maybe she really was. If you finish that sentence, I will forget we're brothers. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Elijah is my son. Pamela is his mother. And anyone who questions that answers to me. Understood. Understood. Junho's voice was tight. I'm just looking out for you. Then look out for me by handling Red Phoenix. Tell them the Silent Dragon is occupied with family matters. They'll understand. Min Jae ended the call before Junho could respond. Family matters. 2 words he'd never thought he'd say. 2 words that terrified him more than any gang war or territory dispute. His phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. He answered warily. Mr. Kong? This is Dr. Kang's nurse. Ms. Walaini is asking for you. She's insisting she needs to speak with you before treatment starts tomorrow. Min Jae was already moving toward the door. Tell her I'm coming. 30 minutes later, he walked back into room 714. Elijah was curled up on a chair, asleep despite the uncomfortable position. Pamela was awake, looking more alert than she had days before. Hope did that, Min Jae realized. The hope and the promise of treatment. You came, she said softly, not wanting to wake Elijah. You called. Min Jae pulled a chair close to the bed, careful not to wake his son. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's. Pamela's voice cracked. Dr. Kong explained the treatment. The costs. Min Jae, I can't let you pay for that. Yes, you can. 500 million won is less than I spent on renovating my compound last year. Min Jae cut her off gently. Money means nothing to me, Pamela. But you and Elijah mean everything. Her eyes filled with tears. You can't just say things like that. Why not? Because you broke my heart once. The words came out broken. And I'm not strong enough to survive you doing it again. Min Jae reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. Then I won't break it again. You say that now. I say that always. Min Jae's voice was fierce. Someone destroyed us 7 years ago. Manufactured evidence. Paid off witnesses. Made me believe you betrayed me when you never did. And I was weak enough to believe it without verification. Pamela stared at him. You really believe me? I know you're telling the truth. The surveillance footage was faked. The woman is the wrong height. The voice recording has pronunciation patterns you don't have. Your roommate was paid to lie. Min Jae's jaw clenched. Someone orchestrated everything to separate us. Who? Min Jae hesitated, because saying it out loud made it real. Made the betrayal complete.
Junho.
Pamela went very still. Your Junho? Your childhood friend. He asked about your schedule. Had access to everything. Positioned himself perfectly to present the evidence. Min Jae's voice was cold. And I remember now he used to watch you at the club. I thought it was casual interest. I was wrong. He wanted me for himself, Pamela whispered. He wanted me focused on the organization.
No distractions. No weaknesses.
Min Jae's hands clenched into fists. You made me human, Pamela. You made me feel things beyond violence and control. And he couldn't stand it. What are you going to do? What needs to be done? Min Jae met her gaze, but carefully, because Elijah needs his father alive and free. Pamela was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed his hand. I'm still angry at you. You should be. And I don't forgive you for believing the worst about me. I wouldn't forgive me either. But, her voice softened. But I never stopped loving you. Even when I hated you. Even when I was raising Elijah alone and cursing your name. Some part of me never let go. Min Jae brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. I never stopped either. I just buried it so deep I convinced myself it was dead. I was wrong. Elijah stirred in his chair, mumbling in his sleep. Both parents looked at their son, and something passed between them. Understanding.
Hope.
The fragile beginning of something that looked like forgiveness. Dr. Kong says treatment starts tomorrow, Pamela said. Aggressive chemo and immunotherapy. I'll be sick for weeks. I'll be here. Min Jae. I'll be here, he repeated firmly. For all of it. I've missed 6 years of Elijah's life. I'm not missing any more of yours. Even when I'm vomiting. When my hair falls out. When I'm too weak to stand. Especially then. Min Jae's voice was raw with emotion. Because that's what you do for family. You show up. And I'm done running from the only real thing I've ever had. Pamela's tears fell freely now, but she was smiling. You really mean that? I really mean that. Then kiss me, she whispered. Because I've waited 7 years to feel human again. Min Jae leaned forward slowly, giving her time to change her mind. But Pamela met him halfway, her lips finding his with desperate hunger. The kiss was everything, apology and forgiveness, pain and hope, 7 years of lost time compressed into one perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Elijah's sleepy voice cut through the moment. Are you guys kissing? They laughed, really laughed, for the first time in 7 years. And outside that hospital room, in the shadows of the corridor, Seo Junho watched through the window with growing panic. His carefully constructed world was crumbling, and the silent dragon was about to become something far more dangerous than a ruthless mafia boss. He was about to become a father with nothing left to lose. Min Jae's fortress compound sat on 3 acres of prime Seoul real estate, surrounded by walls topped with security cameras and guards who'd kill on command. He built it 7 years ago, right after throwing Pamela away, a monument to control and isolation, designed to keep the world out and his emotions buried. Now it felt like a mausoleum. He walked through rooms filled with expensive furniture no one sat on, art no one admired, spaces that screamed wealth and whispered loneliness. This was what he'd chosen over Pamela, over family, over love. Junho was waiting in the study, expensive whiskey already poured, his expression carefully arranged into concern.
Hyung.
Finally, I was getting worried. Min Jae didn't sit, didn't take the offered drink, just studied his childhood friend with new eyes, seeing things he'd been too blind to notice before. The way Junho's smile never quite reached his eyes. The calculated pauses before answering questions. The subtle positioning, always there, always watching, always influencing. Tell me about the Red Phoenix meeting, Min Jae said. Postponed, like you asked. They weren't happy about it, but they'll wait. Jun-ho sipped his whiskey. Min Jae, we need to talk about this woman and her child. Pamela and Elijah. Use their names. Jun-ho's expression flickered, just for a second, but Min Jae caught it. Irritation beneath the concern.
Fine.
Pamela and Elijah. You're moving fast on this. DNA test, treatment, bringing them into your life. I'm just concerned.
About what?
Min Jae's voice was dangerously soft. That you're being manipulated. Jun-ho stood, moving closer with false intimacy. Think about it. Woman from your past shows up with a sick child, claims he's yours, asks for millions in treatment. It's textbook manipulation. Elijah has my eyes.
My jaw.
My hands. Min Jae watched Jun-ho's face carefully. Everyone who saw him noticed the resemblance immediately. Genetic coincidence. Don't insult my intelligence. Min Jae cut him off. That child is mine. The DNA test tomorrow will confirm it, but I don't need scientific proof. I know. Jun-ho's mask slipped further. Even if he is yours, it doesn't mean the woman's motives are pure. She had 7 years to tell you. Why now? Because she's dying. Because our son needs a father. Min Jae moved to the window, looking out at his empty compound. Because she exhausted every other option before swallowing her pride and writing that letter. Her pride. Jun-ho's laugh was harsh. He stopped himself, but not fast enough. A what? Min Jae turned slowly. Finish that sentence.
Juno backtracked smoothly.
Nothing. I'm just saying you ended things with her for a reason. Remember? The surveillance footage? The wire recording? Her roommate's testimony? I want to see that evidence again. The request hung in the air like a bomb. Jun-ho's expression went carefully blank. That was 7 years ago. Hyung. Why dredge up? Because Pamela claims she never betrayed me. Min Jae's voice was steel. Claims she has no idea what I'm talking about. So either she's lying, or that evidence was manufactured. I want to see it again. Tonight. It's probably in storage somewhere. You kept evidence of my ex-girlfriend's betrayal for 7 years, but put it in storage? Min Jae's skepticism was obvious. You, who keeps everything organized, who can find any file within minutes.
Jun-ho's tightened.
I'll look for it. You do that. Min Jae pulled out his phone. In the meantime, I'm calling Dr. Lee about tomorrow's DNA test. Maximum security protocols. 3 independent labs. Complete chain of custody. 3 labs. Jun-ho's voice rose slightly. That's excessive. I know someone who could expedite. Independent verification. Min Jae interrupted.
No shortcuts. No helpful contacts.
Just clean, undeniable proof. Jun-ho set down his whiskey with more force than necessary. You don't trust me. I don't trust anyone when it comes to my son. The possessive came easily now. Including you. The study door opened. One of Min Jae's security guards, looking nervous. Boss, there's someone on line 3. Says it's urgent. About the woman and child. Min Jae took the call on speaker, watching Jun-ho's face. Yes, Mr. Kong. An unfamiliar voice. This is Kim Taeyong. I do information work. Someone contacted me about digging up dirt on a Pamela Wolaini. Min Jae's blood went cold. Who contacted you? Can't say over the phone. But I thought you should know. This person wanted me to find anything scandalous. Financial issues, past relationships, anything that could be twisted. Offered good money. And did you take the job?
No.
Because 7 years ago, the same person paid me to create fake surveillance footage of Ms. Wolaini. Taeyong's voice was careful. I'm trying to go clean. Figured you should know someone's coming after your woman again. Min Jae looked at Jun-ho, whose face had gone carefully blank. This person have a name? Meet me tomorrow. Gangnam Station noon. I'll bring everything, files, communications, proof. Taeyong hung up. The silence in the study was deafening. Interesting call, Min-jae said softly. 7 years ago, someone paid a hacker to create fake surveillance footage. And now that same person is trying to dig up dirt on Pamela again. Could be anyone, Junho started. It's you. Min-jae's voice was flat. You manufactured the evidence 7 years ago, paid off Pamela's roommate, created the fake wire recording, and now you're trying to do it again. That's insane. Is it? Min-jae moved closer, his presence suddenly threatening despite the lack of obvious violence. You had access to everything. My office. My schedule.
My trust.
You asked Pamela about her schedule, remember? Said I wanted to surprise her with a date night.
Junho's composure cracked.
This is paranoia. And I remember now, you watched her at the club. I thought it was casual interest. But it wasn't, was it? You wanted her. And when she chose me, you couldn't stand it. She was a distraction. The words exploded from Junho before he could stop them. You were supposed to build an empire, not fall in love with some hostess who...
He stopped.
But it was too late. Min-jae's expression went ice cold. Some hostess who what? Wasn't good enough for me? Wasn't Korean enough? Wasn't pure enough for your perfect vision of what the silent dragon should be? She made you weak. Junho's mask shattered completely. You started questioning orders. Second-guessing decisions. Talking about going legitimate. All because of her. So you destroyed us. I saved you. Junho's voice rose. Saved the organization. You were going to throw everything away for a woman who I loved. Min-jae's voice was deadly quiet. Who loved me back. Who was carrying my child. And you took that from me. Took 7 years of my son's life. Let Pamela face cancer alone while I sat here in my fortress convincing myself I was strong. You're strong. Stronger without distractions. Get out. Min-jae pointed to the door. Before I forget we grew up together. Junho didn't move. You're making a mistake. That woman and her child will destroy everything we've built.
No.
Min-jae's voice was steel. You already did that. 7 years ago. I just didn't realize it until now. Min-jae. Get out. The roar shook the windows. Get out before I kill you where you stand. Junho finally moved, heading for the door. But he stopped at the threshold, his expression transforming from false concern to something colder. You think you've won? Pamela's still dying. The child makes you vulnerable. Red Phoenix is circling. The other families see weakness. Let them try. Min-jae's voice promised violence. Anyone who touches my family answers to me. Your family.
Junho laughed bitterly.
You've known that child for 3 days. And the woman? She's already half dead. When she's gone, you'll be left with a kid you don't know how to raise and enemies who smell blood. Then I'll learn. Min-jae moved toward Junho with predatory grace. And anyone who threatens them will learn why they call me the Silent Dragon. Junho left finally, slamming the door. But Min-jae heard him on his phone in the hallway, voice low and urgent. The boy showed up. We have a problem. The Red Phoenix is ready. Min-jae's blood went cold. Junho wasn't just trying to discredit Pamela. He was coordinating with rival gangs, planning something that involved his son. He pulled out his phone, dialing security. Put eyes on CO Junho. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he calls. And double the guard on Seoul National University Hospital, room 714. Anyone unauthorized tries to get near my family, kill them. As he hung up, his phone buzzed with a text from Pamela. Elijah won't stop asking when you're coming back. He keeps calling you Appa to the nurses. Despite everything, the betrayal, the danger, the rage burning through his veins, Min-jae smiled. Tell him Appa will be there first thing tomorrow, for the DNA test and forever after. The response came quickly. Forever is a dangerous promise for a man in your position. Min-jae typed back. Good thing I'm dangerous enough to keep it. 3 dots appeared, then. I'm still angry at you. I know. But I'm also falling in love with you again. I never stopped loving you. I just forgot how. Then remember faster. Because we're running out of time. Min-jae stared at those words. Running out of time. Pamela's cancer.
Junho's conspiracy.
Red Phoenix moving. Everything was accelerating, spiraling toward a confrontation that would determine if his family survived or if Junho's 7-year con ended with more destruction. But Min-jae hadn't built an empire by backing down from threats. And now he had something worth fighting for beyond territory and power. He had a son who called him Appa, and a woman who'd survived 7 years of hell because she loved him enough to keep breathing. Junho wanted war? The Silent Dragon would give him one. But this time, Min-jae wasn't fighting for control. He was fighting for the only thing that had ever mattered. Family. Min-jae didn't sleep. How could he? Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Elijah's face, saw Pamela dying, saw 7 years of missed moments he could never get back. At 4 a.m., he was in his war room, a secure basement filled with monitors, weapons, and files on every player in Seoul's underworld. He pulled up everything on CEO Junho. Financial records, communications, movements over the past 7 years. And there it was, buried in encrypted accounts and shell companies. Payments to Kim Taeyong 7 years ago. Payments to Sarah Kim, Pamela's roommate. Payments to the lab technician who'd processed Min-jae's sterility tests after that gang war injury. Junho hadn't just manufactured evidence of Pamela's betrayal. He'd also faked Min-jae's medical records, making him believe he was sterile when he wasn't. Creating a scenario where Min-jae would never question whether Elijah could be his biological son. The level of manipulation was staggering. Methodical. Years in the planning. All because Junho couldn't stand that Min-jae had found something beyond violence and power. Min-jae's phone rang at 6 a.m. Dr. Lee. Mr. Kong, we have a problem. Someone tried to access the DNA samples last night. Security footage caught a lab technician attempting to tamper with them. The same technician Junho paid 7 years ago? Silence. Then, how did you know? Because my childhood friend has been orchestrating everything from the beginning. Min-jae's voice was cold. Secure new samples. Different lab. Maximum security. I want armed guards on the transport. Armed guards for a DNA test. My son's life is at stake. And someone is desperate enough to commit multiple felonies to make sure that test comes back negative. Dr. Lee's voice shifted to complete seriousness. New samples will be collected at 9 a.m. I'll personally oversee transport to 3 separate facilities. Results within 48 hours. Perfect. And Dr. Lee? The security footage of the tamper attempt. Send it to me. All of it. At 7 a.m., Min-jae was in his car, heading back to Seoul National University Hospital. He'd stopped at a market and bought everything he could think of: fresh fruit, juice boxes with dinosaurs, comfort foods, books in both Korean and English for Elijah. The guards in the hospital lobby stiffened when they saw him. Word had spread. The Silent Dragon was here. And he wasn't here for violence. He was here for family. Room 714. Min-jae knocked softly, then pushed the door open. Elijah was already awake, drawing at the small table by Pamela's bed. He looked up, and his face transformed with joy.
Appa.
You came back. The word, Appa, hit Min-jae in the chest every single time. I told you I would. He set the bags down, pulling out juice boxes. I brought dinosaur ones. T-Rex. Elijah grabbed one with both hands, then hesitated. Can Iyama have one too? Of course. Min-jae handed Pamela a gentler flavor, something that wouldn't aggravate her nausea. She took it with a small smile. You didn't have to do all this. Yes, I did. Min-jae started unpacking fruit, crackers, ginger tea. Dr. Lee said your treatment starts today. Aggressive protocol. You'll need nutrition. Min-jae. And I talked to Dr. Kong. You're being moved to a private suite. More comfortable. Space for Elijah to stay overnight when he wants. That's not necessary. It is for me. Min-jae knelt beside the bed, meeting her eyes. Let me do this. Let me take care of you both. Pamela's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Okay. Elijah bounced between them, excitement barely contained. Appa, are we really doing the puzzle test today? The one that proves we're family? Yes. Min-jae ruffled his son's hair. But you know we don't need a test to prove you're mine, right? I know. Elijah's smile was blinding. Because I have your eyes. And your hands. And Iyama says I'm stubborn just like you. She's not wrong, Pamela said dryly. They shared breakfast together. Something so simple, so normal, yet it felt more significant than any territory negotiation or business deal Min-jae had ever conducted. This was family. This was real. At 9 a.m., Dr. Lee arrived with a full security team. Mr. Kong, ready for sample collection. The process was simple. Cheek swabs for both Min-jae and Elijah. But Dr. Lee treated it with the seriousness of a military operation, photographing every step, documenting chain of custody, sealing samples with tamper-evident packaging. Elijah watched with fascination. Why is it so fancy? It's just Q-tips. Because this test is important, Dr. Lee explained. It tells us if your DNA matches your Appa's DNA, like a genetic puzzle. But we already know we match. Elijah looked at Min-jae. Right, Appa? Right. Min-jae's voice was thick. But this makes it official. Legal. So no one can ever question it. After Dr. Lee left with the samples, surrounded by armed guards that made the other hospital staff stare, Min-jae settled in for Pamela's treatment consultation. Dr. Kong was brisk but not unkind. Ms. Walaini, your cancer is aggressive. Stage 4 pancreatic with metastasis to the liver. Normally, we'd be discussing palliative care. Elijah looked confused. What's palliative? End-of-life comfort. Min-jae translated quietly, and Elijah's face crumpled. But Dr. Kong continued. You're young, otherwise healthy, and caught early enough that the experimental protocol might work. It's a combination of targeted chemotherapy and immunotherapy. It's brutal. You'll be very sick for weeks. Hair loss, nausea, fatigue, possible organ damage. But it might work? Pamela's voice was steady despite Elijah clutching her hand. 30% success rate in similar cases. Better odds than you had yesterday. Then we do it. Pamela didn't hesitate. When do we start? This afternoon. But you should know, the first few treatments are the hardest. You'll need support. Someone to help with practical matters with your son. She has me, Min-jae interrupted. For everything. Dr. Kong studied him. The whole underworld is talking about the silent dragon having a secret son. Are you sure you want that kind of attention on this family? Anyone who threatens my family learns why I earned that name. Min-jae's voice promised violence. But yes, doctor. I'm sure. After Dr. Kong left, Min-jae sat with Pamela while Elijah colored at the table. I want to move you both into my compound. Pamela stared at him. What? After treatment stabilizes. You need care. Elijah needs security. My compound has everything, medical staff, space, protection. Min-jae, that's too much. It's what family does. He took her hand. And I've already missed 6 years. I'm not missing anymore. I'm going to be sick for weeks. Vomiting. Exhausted. It won't be pretty. I don't care about pretty. I care about you surviving. Min-jae's intensity was almost frightening. Let me protect you. Let me protect our son. Pamela was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed his hand. Okay. But only until I'm strong enough to stand on my own again.
Deal.
Min-jae pressed a kiss to her forehead. Now rest. Treatment starts in 3 hours. That afternoon, as promised, was brutal. The chemotherapy made Pamela violently ill within 30 minutes. Min-jae held her hair, brought water, wiped her face, and did everything the nurses would do because he refused to leave. Elijah watched with wide, frightened eyes until Min-jae pulled him close. This is how the medicine works. It has to kill the bad cells. It makes Iyama sick now, but it will make her better later. Promise. I promise to do everything in my power to make it so. Which wasn't the same as a guarantee, but it was honest. By evening, Pamela was asleep, exhausted and pale. Elijah had also crashed, curled up on the couch in their new private suite. Min-jae sat between them, guarding his family like a dragon guarding treasure.
His phone buzzed.
A text from Junho. We need to talk. Red Phoenix is making moves. Min-jae didn't respond. Instead, he texted his head of security. Status on Junho surveillance? Met with Red Phoenix underboss this afternoon. Exchange of money. Planning something for this weekend.
Perfect.
Junho was panicking, making alliances with enemies, getting desperate. Desperate men made mistakes. And Min-jae was going to make sure every mistake was documented, recorded, and used to destroy him completely. But not yet. Not until Pamela was stable. Not until Elijah was secure. First family. Then justice. The silent dragon was learning patience. And when he finally struck, Junho wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. Junho sat in his office, smaller than Min-jae's, less prestigious, a constant reminder that he'd spent 30 years as second in command and would never be more, and watched his carefully constructed world crumble through grainy surveillance photos. Min-jae carrying a child into Seoul National University Hospital. Min-jae holding Pamela's hand while she vomited into a basin. Min-jae sleeping in a chair between his son and his dying ex-lover, looking more peaceful than he'd looked in 7 years. The silent dragon had found his humanity again, and Junho had spent 7 years making sure that would never happen. He poured himself whiskey, expensive, imported, bought with money skimmed from operations Min-jae didn't know about, and reviewed his options. All of them bad. The DNA test would come back positive. He tried to tamper with it, but Min-jae had anticipated that move. 3 labs. Armed guards. Complete documentation. Even bribing all 3 would be impossible now. Which meant Elijah Walaini was officially Min-jae's son. Which meant Pamela was officially back in his life. Which meant 7 years of careful manipulation had been destroyed by a 6-year-old with a letter. Junho's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, already knowing who it would be. The tampering failed. Kim Taeyong's voice was flat. And now Min-jae knows I'm talking to you. He's going to want to meet tomorrow. I'm bringing everything. All the files. All the proof of what you had me do 7 years ago. Junho's hand tightened on the phone. How much to keep silent? There's not enough money in Seoul to make me cross the silent dragon when he's protecting family.
Taeyang lauget bitterly.
You know what happens to people who threaten his son? I'm not dying for you. The line went dead. Junho threw his phone across the room, watching it shatter against the wall. Everything was accelerating. Min-jae knew. Pamela knew. And soon the entire organization would know that their trusted underboss had orchestrated a 7-year conspiracy to keep the boss from having a family. The penalty for betraying the boss was death. Slow.
Public.
Designed to send a message. Unless Junho struck first. He pulled out a burner phone and made a call. It's time. Tomorrow night. The woman and the child. Make it look like Red Phoenix retaliation. Boss said no moves against his family. The voice on the other end was wary. He'll kill anyone who touches them. He'll never know it was us. And when he's devastated, consumed with revenge against Red Phoenix, he'll be vulnerable, distracted. We can restructure the organization with him focused on external threats instead of internal betrayals. This is insane. This is necessary. Junho's voice turned cold. And you're already too deep to back out. Tomorrow night. Hospital room 714. Make it clean. He hung up before the assassin could protest further. Then he opened his laptop and began manufacturing evidence. Photos of Red Phoenix members near the hospital. Intercepted communications about targeting Min-jae's family. Enough circumstantial proof to point suspicion away from himself and toward their rivals. If Pamela and Elijah died tomorrow, Min-jae would be devastated, consumed with grief. And Junho would be there, like he'd always been, to comfort him, guide him, keep him focused on external enemies instead of questioning who really orchestrated their deaths. It would work. It had to work. Because the alternative was Junho's head on a pike outside the Crimson Dragon as a warning to anyone who betrayed the Silent Dragon. While Junho plotted, Min-jae received a call at 3 a.m. that made his blood run cold. Boss. His head of security, voice tight. We intercepted communications. Someone's planning a hit on the hospital. Tomorrow night. Targeting room 714. Min Jae was already moving, pulling on clothes, checking his gun. Source? One of Junho's usual contractors. The order came from a burner phone registered to a shell company Junho controls. He's trying to kill them. Min Jae's voice was ice. My son and Pamela. Looks that way. But there's more. He's manufacturing evidence to make it look like Red Phoenix retaliation. Setting up a war to cover his tracks. Min Jae's rage was cold, calculated, deadly. Change of plans. I want every member of the 5 families council contacted tonight. Emergency meeting tomorrow evening. Neutral location. Full security detail. Sir, that's... Junho betrayed me 7 years ago. He's attempting murder now. The council needs to know. Min Jae's voice promised violence. And I want that hit team captured alive. I want them to testify about who hired them. Yes, boss. Min Jae hung up and immediately called Dr. Lee. Move Pamela and Elijah to a secure location. Tonight. Use the ambulance entrance. Full security escort. Mr. Kong, it's 3 a.m. Someone's planning to kill my family tomorrow night. Min Jae's voice cut through any protests. Move them. Now. And don't tell anyone where they're going. Not staff. Not security. No one. Silence. Then, where should I move them? My compound. Medical suite is fully equipped. I'll have nurses and security waiting. On it. By 4 a.m., Pamela, sedated and confused, was being loaded into an ambulance while Elijah clutched Min Jae's hand with sleepy trust. Appa, where are we going? Home, Min Jae said. To keep you safe. The convoy pulled up to Min Jae's compound at dawn. Guards opened gates topped with security cameras. Medical staff waited in the main house, ready to set up a hospital room in what had been Min Jae's cold, empty fortress. By noon, Pamela was settled in a suite that made hospital rooms look like prison cells. Private balcony, comfortable bed, medical equipment hidden behind elegant panels. And most importantly, security that would kill anyone unauthorized who tried to enter. Elijah explored his new bedroom with wonder. This is mine? Really? Really. Min Jae showed him the attached bathroom, the closet already filled with new clothes, the bookshelves stocked with Korean and English books about dinosaurs. It's like a palace. Elijah bounced on the bed. Does Iyama get to stay too? She does. Right next door. Connected to your room, so she's never far away. Elijah threw his arms around Min Jae's waist. Best Appa ever. The simple declaration made Min Jae's throat tight. I'm trying to be. You are. Elijah looked up with absolute trust. You're keeping us safe. Like dragons are supposed to. That afternoon, Min Jae sat with Pamela while she recovered from the rushed transport. I should be angry you moved me without asking. Are you? No. She squeezed his hand. Because you're protecting Elijah. That's all that matters. I'm protecting both of you. Min Jae's voice was fierce. Junho ordered a hit. Tomorrow night. I'm not giving him the chance. Pamela went pale. He wants us dead. He wants me focused on external enemies instead of internal betrayals. Killing you and Elijah would do that. Min Jae's expression was ice. But he miscalculated. Because now I have proof. Intercepted communications. The hit team is being captured as we speak. And tonight, the 5 families council will judge him. The council? 5 Mafia families that control Seoul. We govern ourselves through old codes. Betrayal of a boss is punishable by death. Min Jae's voice was flat. Junho will face justice. And I'll make sure he knows it was his obsession with controlling me that destroyed him. Pamela was quiet for a moment. Will you kill him? The old me would. Min Jae met her gaze. But you said Elijah needs his father alive and free. Killing Junho personally risks both. So I'll let the council decide. And I'll abide by their judgment. Even if they choose mercy, they won't. Min Jae's smile was cold. But if they do, exile is worse than death for a man like Junho. stripped of power, protection, status. Forced to live knowing he lost everything because he couldn't accept that I found something more important than the organization. What did you find?
You.
Elijah. Family. Min-jae brought her hand to his lips. Everything that actually matters. That evening, as the sun set over Seoul, the 5 families' council convened in a traditional hanok, neutral territory, guarded by representatives from all 5 families, designed for exactly these kinds of trials. Min-jae arrived with evidence on encrypted drives, testimony from captured assassins, financial records proving Junho's 7-year conspiracy. And most damning, Elijah's DNA results, delivered that afternoon. 99.97% probability of paternity. Undeniable. Absolute. Junho arrived looking confident, surrounded by loyalists, clearly expecting this to be about Red Phoenix or territory disputes. He didn't expect to see the council already seated in judgment. Didn't expect Min-jae to stand as prosecutor. Didn't expect his world to end tonight. The head of the council, Elder Park, 70 years old and respected by all 5 families, gestured for silence. We've been called to judge a betrayal. Seo Junho, you stand accused of conspiracy against your boss. How do you answer? This is absurd. Junho's voice was steady. Min-jae is grieving, emotional, not thinking clearly. A woman and child appear from his past, and suddenly he's accusing his oldest friend. The child is his son. Elder Park held up the DNA results. Verified by 3 independent laboratories. 99.97% certainty. Kang Min-jae has an heir.
Junho's composure cracked.
Just for a second. But every council member saw it. Min-jae stepped forward, his voice cold and precise. 7 years ago, Seo Junho orchestrated evidence that made me believe Pamela Walaini, the mother of my child, was a police informant. He paid Kim Taeyong to create fake surveillance footage, bribed her roommate for false testimony, created fake wire recordings, all to separate us. He pressed a button. Kim Taeyong's video testimony played on screens around the room. Every detail, every payment, every manufactured lie. Junho's face went white. He also, Min-jae continued, tampered with my medical records 7 years ago. Made me believe I was sterile. So that when Pamela became pregnant, I would never question whether the child could be mine. More evidence. Financial trails. Communications. The lab technician who'd been paid to alter results. And finally, Min-jae's voice turned lethal. Last night, he ordered the assassination of Pamela Walaini and my 6-year-old son, to eliminate evidence of his betrayal and force me to focus on external enemies instead of internal conspiracy. The captured assassins were brought in, testified under oath about Junho's order, the burner phone, the planned hospital attack. The council chamber was silent as death. Elder Park looked at Junho with disgust. What defense do you offer?
Junho stood slowly.
His mask was gone now. Nothing left but desperate calculation. I did it for the organization. She made him weak, distracted, talking about going legitimate, about family, about things that would have destroyed everything we built. So you destroyed his family instead. Elder Park's voice was ice. I saved him. Junho's voice rose. The silent dragon doesn't need love. He needs focus, power, control. That woman and her bastard. Min-jae moved before anyone could stop him. One moment, he was across the room. The next, Junho was on the ground, Min-jae's hand around his throat. Call my son a bastard again, Min-jae whispered, and council judgment won't matter. I'll kill you here. Guards pulled them apart. Min-jae stepped back, breathing hard, eyes promising murder. Elder Park banged his staff. The evidence is overwhelming. Seo Junho betrayed his boss through conspiracy, manufactured evidence, and attempted murder of the boss's family. Under the old codes, the penalty is death. Junho's face went gray. However, Elder Park continued, Kang Min-jae has requested exile instead, as is his right as the wronged party. Every eye in the room turned to Min-jae. I want him alive, Min-jae said quietly. Not out of mercy, But because my son asked me once if I'm angry.
I said yes.
He asked at who. I couldn't tell a 6-year-old that his father's best friend tried to kill him and his mother. Min-jae looked at Junho with cold finality. So, instead of death, you get to live. Stripped of rank, protection, and status. Exiled to Japan, where our rivals will know exactly what you did. Where every day you'll wake up knowing you lost everything because you couldn't accept that love isn't weakness. The council accepts this judgment. Elder Park's voice carried absolute authority. Seo Junho, you are exiled. Any attempt to return to Seoul results in immediate execution. You have 24 hours to leave. Junho stared at Min-jae with hatred and disbelief. You're making a mistake. That woman will destroy you. The child makes you vulnerable. Our enemies will see weakness. Let them try. Min-jae's voice was soft, deadly. Because now I'm not just the silent dragon protecting territory. I'm a father protecting family. And there's nothing more dangerous in this world than that. Min-jae walked out of that panic knowing he'd just declared war on anyone who threatened his family. And he'd never been more ready for battle in his life. The news spread through Seoul's underworld like wildfire. The silent dragon has a son. His trusted underboss was exiled for betrayal. The organization was restructuring under new rules, family first, empire second. Some saw opportunity. Red Phoenix Triad in particular saw weakness. They were wrong. Min-jae spent the next 3 weeks in his compound, splitting time between his war room and Pamela's medical suite. Watching his son discover what it meant to have a father. Watching Pamela fight cancer with the same fierce determination she'd used to survive 7 years alone. The treatment was brutal. There were days when Pamela couldn't keep anything down. Days when the pain made her cry despite the morphine. Days when she looked at Elijah and Min-jae with such desperate love it hurt to witness. But she fought. And slowly, impossibly, she started winning. The tumors are shrinking, Dr. Kong said during week 3, reviewing scans with barely concealed amazement. Not gone, but shrinking. The protocol is working better than we hoped. Pamela cried. Min-jae held her. And Elijah danced around the room singing about how Iyama was getting better. But while Pamela healed, threats multiplied. Red Phoenix made their move on a Tuesday afternoon. A convoy of black cars pulled up to a playground where Elijah was playing under the watchful eyes of 6 armed guards disguised as parents. The Red Phoenix underboss, a man called Knife, known for his brutality, stepped out and walked directly toward Elijah. He made it 5 steps before Min-jae's guards surrounded him. That's far enough, one guard said, hand on his concealed weapon. Knife smiled, showing gold teeth. Just wanted to see the silent dragon's famous son. The boy who makes him weak. The boy who makes him deadly, the guard corrected. Turn around. Walk away. Don't test this. Knife looked at Elijah, who was watching with his father's intensity, and laughed. Cute kid. Be a shame if something happened. The threat hung in the air for 3 seconds. Then Knife's phone rang. He answered, and his expression shifted from smug to pale. Yes, sir. Understood. He looked back at the guards. Message received. Then he left, moving faster than he'd arrived. Min-jae, watching through security feeds from his compound, made a call. Elder Park? Thank you for the intervention. The council does not approve of threatening children, the elder said. Red Phoenix has been informed that any move against your family is considered a move against all 5 families. They won't try again. I appreciate it. Don't thank me yet. Your restructuring is causing waves. Some members don't like that you're putting family above organization business. Then they can challenge me directly. Min-jae's voice was steel. But they won't. Because they know what happens to people who threaten my family. That's what concerns me, Elder Park said quietly. You're becoming something new. Not just a mafia boss. A father who happens to run the underworld. It's unprecedented. Then let it set a precedent. Min-jae hung up. That evening, he had dinner with Pamela and Elijah in the compound's dining room, a space designed for hosting important meetings but now transformed by a 6-year-old's drawings taped to expensive wallpaper and Pamela's laughter filling corners that had been silent for years. "Appa," Elijah said between bites of bulgogi. The ajushi at the playground today was scary. Min-jae's hands stilled on his chopsticks. "What ajushi?" "The one with the gold teeth." He stared at me funny. Elijah was completely casual about it, not understanding the danger. "But your friends made him leave." Pamela looked at Min-jae with fear in her eyes. He gave her a reassuring nod, then focused on Elijah. "If anyone ever makes you uncomfortable, you tell the guards immediately. They're there to protect you." "Because I'm your son? Because you're precious." Min-jae reached over and ruffled Elijah's hair. "And anyone who threatens someone I love answers to me." Later, after Elijah was asleep, Min-jae and Pamela sat on her private balcony. She was wrapped in blankets despite the warm night, chemo leaving her perpetually cold. But her color was better. Her eyes brighter. She was winning. "He's right to be scared," Pamela said quietly. "Your world is dangerous." "I know." Min-jae didn't insult her by pretending otherwise. "But I'm making it safer. The council has declared him off limits. Anyone who touches him dies.
No exceptions.
What about school? Friends? A normal life?" Pamela's voice cracked. "I didn't survive cancer just to watch our son grow up in a fortress." Min-jae was quiet for a long moment. "I'm restructuring the organization. Delegating more. Going more legitimate. It'll take time, but Elijah will have as normal a childhood as possible." "How normal can it be when your father is the silent dragon?" "I don't know." Min-jae took her hand. "But I'm going to try. For him.
For you.
For the family I almost lost." Pamela leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence until her phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Kong. "Latest scans show continued improvement. If progress continues, we might be able to downgrade from stage 4 to stage 3 within 2 months. It's unprecedented." Pamela showed Min-jae the message with trembling hands. "I might actually survive this." "You will survive this." Min-jae's voice was absolute certainty. "And then we're going to give Elijah the family he deserves." "Are you proposing?" Pamela asked with a ghost of her old humor. "Not yet." Min-jae smiled. "But soon. When you're strong enough to dance at our wedding." "Bold of you to assume I'll say yes." "You will." Min-jae's confidence was unshakable. "Because you love me. And I love you. And Elijah deserves parents who are together." "Arrogant dragon," Pamela murmured, but she was smiling. 3 months after Elijah delivered that bloodstained letter, Pamela's latest scans showed something impossible. Complete remission. The cancer was gone. Not shrunk. Not managed.
Gone.
Dr. Kong stood in the medical suite with tears in his eyes. "In 20 years of oncology, I've never seen stage 4 pancreatic respond like this. You're a medical miracle, Ms. Walaini." Pamela sobbed. Min-jae held her. And Elijah, who'd been so brave for so long, finally allowed himself to believe Izayama would survive. That night, Min-jae made a decision. He gathered his top lieutenants, men who'd served him for years, and made an announcement that would reshape Seoul's underworld. "I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations, promoting new leadership, transitioning the organization toward legitimate business." He looked at each face, daring them to challenge him. "Anyone who has a problem with this can leave. No hard feelings.
No retaliation."
Silence. Then one of his oldest guards spoke up. "Why?" "Because my son asked me what I do for work." Min-jae's voice was steady. "And I realized I want to give him an answer he can be proud of. I'm not abandoning the organization. But I'm putting family first. The other families will see this as weakness." "Let them." Min-jae's smile was cold. "They tried to threaten my family once. It didn't work out well for them. Anyone who wants to test whether fatherhood made me soft is welcome to try." No one took him up on the offer. Because they'd all seen what the silent dragon looked like when protecting his family. And it was more terrifying than anything he'd done as a ruthless boss. Thanksgiving arrived, Pamela's African tradition that she wanted to share with her new family. Min-jae, who'd never celebrated anything beyond Lunar New Year, found himself helping cook turkey while Elijah made place cards with painstaking 6-year-old precision. "Appa goes here," Elijah explained, positioning cards around the dining table. "Iyama here. Me in the middle. Family." The word hit Min-jae every single time.
Family.
Something he'd thought he'd never have. Something Junho had stolen from him 7 years ago. But they'd won. Against cancer. Against conspiracy. Against everything that tried to destroy them. Pamela emerged from her room looking healthier than Min-jae had ever seen her. Hair growing back in soft curls. Color in her cheeks. Weight returning to her frame. She wore a traditional hanbok in deep red, Min-jae's gift, tailored perfectly. "You're staring," she said, but she was smiling. "You're beautiful." Min-jae couldn't look away. "You've always been beautiful, but seeing you healthy, strong, alive." "I know." Pamela crossed to him, standing on tiptoes to kiss him softly. "I can't believe I'm here. 6 months ago, I was writing goodbye letters. Now I'm planning Elijah's 7th birthday. About that." Min-jae pulled her close. "I was thinking,
For his birthday.
we could make an announcement." "What kind of announcement?" Min-jae knelt, just as he'd done that first night when Elijah brought them back together. "The kind where I ask his mother to marry me." Pamela's hands flew to her mouth. "Min-jae, I know it's fast. I know we're still rebuilding trust. But Pamela, I wasted 7 years. I'm not wasting another day." He pulled out a ring box, simple, elegant, a diamond that caught light like hope. "Marry me. Let me be your husband and Elijah's father officially. Let me spend the rest of my life making up for the years I lost." "Yes," Pamela whispered. "Yes, you arrogant dragon. Yes." Min-jae slipped the ring on her finger just as Elijah's voice rang out. "What are you doing?" They turned to find their son staring with wide eyes. "I'm asking your Iyama to marry me," Min-jae said calmly. "Does that mean we're a real family? Like, forever family?" "Forever family," Min-jae confirmed. Elijah screamed and launched himself at both parents, nearly knocking them over. Best Thanksgiving ever. The dinner was perfect. Not because the food was fancy. Min-jae had hired professional chefs, but Elijah insisted on helping, which meant mashed potatoes had interesting lumps, but because they were together. "I'm thankful for Appa coming back," Elijah said during grace. "And Iyama being healthy. And this house. And dinosaur books. And—" "We get it, baby," Pamela laughed. "You're thankful. What are you thankful for, Iyama?" Pamela looked at Min-jae.
Seconde chance.
"And brave little boys who deliver letters." Min-jae's turn. "I'm thankful for the woman who never gave up on me. And the son who brought me to my knees." Later, after Elijah crashed from sugar overload, Min-jae and Pamela sat in the compound's garden, transformed from sterile landscaping to something warm and alive, just like everything else Pamela touched. "When do you want to get married?" Min-jae asked. "Spring." Pamela leaned against him. "I want cherry blossoms." And both our cultures represented. Korean traditions and African. Something Elijah will remember.
Done.
Min-jae kissed her temple. "Anything you want. I want you to be careful." Pamela's voice turned serious. "Red Phoenix might have backed off, but you've made enemies by changing the organization. Someone will challenge you eventually. Let them." Min-jae's arms tightened around her. "I've fought gang wars, territory disputes, hostile takeovers. I can handle internal resistance. Just don't die on me." Pamela's voice cracked. "I didn't survive cancer to lose you to a bullet. I'm not going anywhere." Min-jae promised. "I have too much to live for now." The next 6 months passed in a blur of healing, planning, and transformation. Pamela's scans stayed clean. Elijah started at an international school with security so subtle even his classmates didn't notice. And Min-jae successfully transitioned most of his operations to legitimate businesses. He was still the silent dragon, still commanded respect and fear in Seoul's underworld. But now he was also Appa, fiancé, family man. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. The wedding was planned for April, under cherry blossoms in a private garden. Small ceremony. Close friends. Both families represented what little family either of them had. Elder Park agreed to officiate, recognizing the marriage under both traditional Korean law and modern civil law. Elijah would be ring bearer, already practicing his serious walk down the aisle. Everything was perfect. Until 3 weeks before the wedding, when Pamela collapsed during a routine checkup. Min-jae got the call while in a business meeting. Dropped everything. Drove to the hospital with his heart in his throat, terrified that cancer had returned, that remission was temporary, that he was going to lose her after all. He burst into the examination room to find Pamela sitting on the bed, Dr. Kong smiling broadly, and nurses congratulating her. "What?" Min-jae started. "I'm pregnant," Pamela said, tears streaming down her face. 12 weeks. Healthy. Dr. Kong says everything looks perfect. Min-jae stopped breathing. Pregnant. The cancer treatments shouldn't have made this possible, Dr. Kong explained. But somehow, miraculously, Ms. Walaini conceived about 3 months ago, right around when she entered remission. Min-jae crossed to Pamela in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. "We're having another baby. Are you happy?" Pamela asked against his chest. "Happy." Min-jae pulled back to look at her. "Pamela, I'm terrified and thrilled and so grateful I can barely think straight. Another child. Another chance to be a father from the beginning. A sibling for Elijah. A family that keeps growing." They told Elijah that night. He took it surprisingly well for a 6-year-old about to lose only child status. "Will the baby like dinosaurs?" was his main question. "Probably," Min-jae said. "Because you'll teach them." "Okay then." Elijah went back to his coloring. "I'm going to be the best big brother." The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, warm sun, cherry blossoms in full bloom, and a garden transformed into something magical. Pamela wore a white hanbok with delicate embroidery. Min-jae wore traditional darumaji. Elijah wore a miniature version of his father's outfit and took his ring-bearer duties very seriously. Elder Park officiated with gravitas that made even Elijah stop fidgeting. "These 3 have already survived more than most families face in a lifetime," Elder Park said. "Betrayal. Illness. 7 years of separation. They've been tested in ways that would destroy lesser bonds. And yet they stand here, whole, ready to begin again." Min-jae's vows were simple. "I promise to never doubt you again. To fight for us. To be the husband and father you both deserve. To protect this family with everything I have." Pamela's response made everyone cry. "I promise to keep being brave. To trust that this time is real. To build a life with you that's worth all the pain we survived. To love you even when you're being an arrogant dragon." Elijah interrupted the kiss to add his own vow. "I promise to be good and teach the baby about dinosaurs and not complain too much about sharing my toys." The reception was small, intimate, perfect. Guards in formal attire crying into their champagne. Elder Park toasting to second chances. Everyone celebrating not just a wedding but a victory over everything that tried to destroy them. As the sun set, Min-jae stood with his wife and son, Pamela's hand resting on her barely visible baby bump, and realized something profound. 7 years ago, a letter had brought him to his knees. But it had also lifted him to heights he'd never imagined. Not heights of power or wealth or fear, but heights of love, family, and belonging. The silent dragon had found something worth protecting more than his empire. And he'd spend the rest of his life making sure no one ever took it away again. 5 years later, Min-jae stood in his compound's garden, now filled with play equipment, chalk drawings, and the beautiful chaos of family life, watching his children play. Elijah, almost 12 now, was teaching his little sister Hannah the proper way to identify different dinosaur species. Hannah, for years old with her mother's eyes and Min-jae's stubborn intensity, listened with rapt attention. And crawling between them was 2-year-old Miho, determined to keep up with his older siblings despite his tiny legs. 3 children. 3 miracles. 3 reasons Min-jae woke up every morning grateful to be alive. Pamela emerged from the house, healthy and vibrant, still working as a translator, but on her own terms. Are you coming? Elijah's science fair starts in an hour. I'm coming. Min-jae scooped up Miho, who squealed with delight. Just taking it in. Taking what in? Everything. Min-jae looked at his wife, his partner, his love, his second chance. 7 years ago, I thought I'd lost everything. Now I have everything that actually matters. Pamela kissed him softly. You went soft, silent dragon.
No.
Min-jae smiled. I just learned what true strength looks like. The science fair was held at Elijah's school, an international academy where he thrived despite his unusual family situation. Or maybe because of it. Elijah had inherited his father's intensity and his mother's warmth, creating a boy who was both fierce and kind. His project was on paleontology, naturally, complete with reconstructed fossils, detailed charts, and a presentation that had even the teachers impressed. Appa helped with the reconstruction. Elijah explained to one teacher. He knows about building things. Min-jae, standing nearby with Hannah on his shoulders and Miho in his arms, felt pride so intense it hurt. This was his son. Smart. Confident. Loved. After the science fair, they went for dinner at a Korean African fusion restaurant, Elijah's favorite. The kind of place that represented their blended family perfectly. Can we get ice cream after? Hannah asked, already knowing the answer. Maybe, Pamela said, which meant yes. I want chocolate, Miho declared, though he could barely say the word. Min-jae looked around the table at his family, loud, messy, perfect, and felt something he'd thought was dead 7 years ago. Complete happiness. His phone buzzed. A text from Elder Park. Red Phoenix underboss found dead this morning. Suspected internal conflict. Thought you should know. Min-jae texted back. Not my problem anymore. And it wasn't. He'd successfully transitioned most of his operations to legitimate businesses. Still had influence in Seoul's underworld. Still commanded respect. But his focus had shifted. From empire to family. From control to love. From silent dragon to Appa. That night, after children were bathed and storied and tucked in, Min-jae and Pamela sat in their bedroom, transformed from sterile bachelor space to warm family retreat. Elijah asked me today if he has to join the family business when he grows up, Pamela said. Min-jae's hands stilled on the book he was reading. What did you say? That he can be anything he wants. Scientist.
Teacher.
Astronaut. Whatever makes him happy. Pamela looked at her husband. Was I wrong?
No.
Min-jae set the book aside. I want different for them. Better. Safer. They get to choose their paths. Even if Elijah wants to follow yours? Especially then. Min-jae pulled Pamela close. Let him be 12. Let him love dinosaurs and science fairs. Let him be innocent as long as possible. Pamela kissed his jaw. You're a good father. I'm trying to be. Min-jae's voice was rough. I missed 6 years with Elijah. I won't miss anything with Hannah and Miho. You won't. Pamela's certainty was absolute. Because that man who threw me away 7 years ago?
He's gone.
You're different now. Better. Human. Pamela smiled. You let yourself be human again. 6 months later, Elijah's birthday arrived, his 12th, marking 6 years since he'd walked into his father's office with a blood-stained letter. The party was large, loud, filled with school friends and family friends, and even some of Min-jae's business associates who'd learned to navigate his new priorities. But the best part came after, when just family remained. Min-jae gathered his children and wife in the garden where they'd gotten married. Elijah, 6 years ago today, you did something incredibly brave. I delivered Iyama's letter. Elijah said, old enough now to understand the magnitude of what he'd done. You saved us. Min-jae's voice was thick. You crossed Seoul alone, walked past guards, found me when I was lost, and you brought our family back together. I was scared, Elijah admitted. But Iyama said you were brave enough to help if I was brave enough to ask. She was right. Min-jae pulled out an envelope, yellow, just like the one Elijah had delivered. This is for you. Open it when you're older. When you need to remember that courage changes everything. Elijah took it carefully. What's in it? A letter from your appa.
Telling you how much you mean to me.
How you taught me what real strength looks like. Min-jae's voice broke. How a 6-year-old boy brought a mafia boss to his knees and showed him what actually matters. I love you, appa. Elijah hugged his father tight. I love you too, son. Min-jae held him close. Forever and always. As the sun set over their garden, Min-jae looked at his family. Pamela holding Miho, Hannah pressed against her mother's side, Elijah in his arms, and thought about that day 6 years ago. A child's trembling voice. A bloodstained envelope. A desperate mother's last hope. Some letters ask for money. Some letters beg for forgiveness. But the letter Elijah delivered that day? It asked for something far more difficult. It asked a monster to become human again. And, impossibly, miraculously, it worked. The silent dragon learned that true power wasn't measured in fear or violence or control. It was measured in love, sacrifice, and the courage to protect what matters most. 7 years ago, someone tried to destroy Min-jae's family before it could begin. But they failed. Because some bonds are stronger than betrayal. Some love survives even 7 years of lies. And some families are worth fighting for, no matter what it costs. Min-jae had built an empire on fear. But he built a family on love. And in the end, love was the only thing that ever really mattered. The letter that brought the silent dragon to his knees had given him something far more valuable than any territory or power. It gave him home. It gave him family. It gave him forever.